what do I need to do for the day? And of those things, what's the one thing?
Yep.
And if I don't do that, the day kind of went to the wayside.
Yep.
And then of those things, you're creating like maybe 2 items that you absolutely have to do. Then you start looking at them. Can any of them be leveraged? Can somebody do it for you? Can you push it off until you really got to look at your schedule this time. And
Yep.
I'm using my Google Calendar tremendously to
Mm-hmm.
just to keep me, even if it's a conversation, a phone call that I am booked to have at 10:30 or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
put it into the Google Calendar and give myself a 15-minute slot or a 30-minute slot. So I appreciate this time in that it is helping me schedule myself better.
Yeah. Well, and I think to what you just said about, having the list and focusing on what your one thing is, I think, when we're looking in our world and we're looking at the MREA when they're talking about lead generation, which is really what we're going to be diving into today, that's why most people do it between that 9 to 11 a.m. hour, because you're knocking that out in the beginning and you're not
Mhm.
letting anything else get in the way of getting done your one thing.
That's right.
So yesterday we talked about the economic model, and as always, you were brilliant. As always, every time watch you do it, I'm like, let me just hang back and let the
Thanks, Matt.
master, yeah, let the master do their work. Um,
Well, one thing that we really didn't go through too deep, and we can do as we get through the back of the book, I'd like to revisit
mhm.
once we're in the back of the book, the economic model for the millionaire real estate agent.
Yeah.
I just know that right now if we wanted to create a goal just for the last 7 months of this year,
Mhm.
talking about June, July, August, September, October, November, December, then using the economic model and putting in a number that you're adjusting as to your new goal
Mhm.
from now until the end of the year. That's how you would use that economic model, by putting 100,000 or 200,000 in that gross revenue spot. Of course, all these models and foundations and perspectives are to aid you to think like a millionaire agent and create a millionaire business. And yet, on your way there, there's all these other stops. So
Exactly, and that's going to get us to the earn a million before we get to the net a million.
that's right.
And so we talked about kind of the overview of the economic model. We will be, once we get to page 175. 175, there's about like 50 pages from there, or 175 to about like 215, I'd say. It's going to be about the MREA, the economic model, the lead gen model. So everything we're doing now is really just the basics and the essentials to understand the models, and then we'll get into how to actually get to the
Yeah.
MREA level.
Yeah. So we'll have a second opportunity for that. And so to that point, Matt, I want to review something.
Hmm.
Is the first part of the book, like you have stated, the first part of the book is more about the mindset.
Yeah.
And then when we get to page 123 is where that graph of the 4
Yeah.
models.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first 100 pages or so is the mindset. It's how we think. It's what we go back to when we feel a little off track, or we need to reassess our goals, or a big why, or pandemic or a life event happens and it shakes our tree, our ground is shaken.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first 100. The next 100 that we go into, and we've already started, is the millionaire real estate agent models.
Yeah.
Um, and so I usually tell people at 171 is when you will stop and go back to the beginning and keep working page 1 to 171 until you've mastered the gross a million.
Yeah.
Okay. Because beyond that 171, as Matt, as you're talking about, beyond that 171 becomes, how do I create a millionaire real estate agent business,
Yeah.
which is created, it works towards netting $1 million in the business, which, just a little sneak preview, is you'd have to gross 2.5 million
Yep.
to net $1 million, because you'd have people in your business and you'd have admin, you'd have all sorts of expenses,
Yep.
and we'll get into that.
Yep.
Excuse me.
No, you're good.
So I just want you guys to understand that, because it was a big part of me grasping this book, and I know a lot of you know how much I love my red book. First 100, mindset. Second 100, basic models and systems. Rinse and repeat until you've got to the $1 million GCI.
Yeah.
After that, then you start to implement, bigger models into the business.
Well, and believe it or not, I mean, once we get through this chapter, we'll be about halfway through the book, give or take. So we're definitely, making a lot of progress. And so now, as we move into model 2, the lead generation model, we come out of the economic model and we're looking at what fuels the economic engine. So in order for the economic model to be fueled, we need leads. And as Gary says, I've seen him say this numerous times, you can never have enough good leads. And the first piece of this puzzle is the positioning battle. And this whole chapter really reminds me of Ignite session 2, which is, because we're going to get into like the 8x8, the 12 directions, we're going to get into all that. But it reminds me of Ignite session 2, which is about your database and about growing and feeding your database. Yet the one
I think the session is build your business.
Build your business, yeah. I believe it's that, with 2 or 3. And one of the things they talk about in that session is exactly what they talk about on pages 133 and 134, which is essentially that brand awareness. And ultimately, there was a Harvard professor or psychologist, George Miller, who said the maximum number of product brands we can remember for a given category, the brand saturation point for the mind, is 7. So meaning if you have, if you're thinking of sodas, you might think of Coke, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, ginger ale, whatever. And honestly, for me, maybe my brain capacity is 5. Yet the point is that everyone has a natural saturation point where they can only retain so many brands. And ultimately, what this is saying is that, if we can only think of, 5 or 6 or 7 sodas or toothpaste, then people can really only remember 2 or 3 realtors. That's so right. It's about earning that mind share to be one of those 2 or 3 realtors.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I mean, if you think about it, you said Coke and Pepsi. Anybody, if you said, give me the name of 5 sodas, the Coke and Pepsi are probably going to be the first 2. They do a fantastic job at brand. And if you looked at the logo, you'd even be able to pick out what soda you were looking at, right? Yep. And sneakers, same thing. There used to be like a little brain game that I used to play. And it was where it would show you the logo and you'd have to guess the company. So we do that in everything. Yep. Why would it be any different in the real estate industry? Mm-hmm. Right? And so what's really cool about this though, and we're diving in, is everybody has a different market. So you're not competing. It's not like, okay, well, there's all these people in the world and you're all competing for all these people in the world. No. Yeah. It's, you have and that's why we talk about building your database. You have a center of influence. You have a sphere of influence. You have people that know, love, like you, that you've done business with before, that you've gone to school with. My mom, she's 70 years old. She's super healthy. She's amazing. And she has awesome friends from 2nd grade. Okay. So that is a sphere. So some people are like, oh, I haven't been to school in maybe 40 years or so. You still have friends from school that you should be putting on that sphere of influence. So everybody has a different one of those. Yeah. And so that is the first business you create, is that list of people that you can market out to. If you're not marketing to those, I mean, already those people know your name. Now they just have to get familiar with what your message is and what your brand is. So, is it going to be easier, and this is a great lead in, is it going to be easier to go put that message and that brand and that name out in front of all these people who don't know you to earn their business? Or do you think it would be a little bit easier if you just let the people who know you, hey, here's my brand, here's my marketing, here's what I can do for you in my real estate world? They're probably going to take the bite a little bit easier than these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I mean, we've been talking about this now for a while, but we've been talking about earning mind share now to get market share later. Yes. And honestly, right now, you're almost at a point where we were talking with Bill the other day and with Ron and with a lot of people, the market's really heating up right now. Just over the last couple of days, we're seeing a lot more activity. So, if you've been doing the activities that we've been bringing up over the last month and a half through the Shift series and the MREA, you should be earning that mind share. So when people are thinking, hey, I want to list my property, or hey, I want to go take a look at this property, that you put in the time and the work to build those relationships.
A friend of mine used to say, well, and I think it might even come from John Maxwell, but deposits, you're making deposits so that you can have a withdrawal. You can't
Yep.
take a withdrawal if you haven't made any deposit.
Yep.
So if you have been sowing your seeds for the last 2 months, or even for the whole year, and you got some people that are in the pipe, you may be working on people for a year and a half or 2 years.
Yep.
If you're sowing the seeds and you're doing that activity, then it will show up.
Well, and Mary Beth, I think the stat was in the Shift book, but I just have to read it again because I think it's so powerful. On page 134, it says, according to NAR research, hold on, I went to the wrong page. 133. According to NAR research, 76% of all sellers contacted only one agent, and 16% contacted just two. On the buyer side, 59% of all buyers interviewed only one agent, and 22% met with just two. So again, it's just, you can't emphasize enough that basically, if you can just earn that mind share, like, people aren't looking to interview and have a parade of agents walk through their house and do a listing presentation. They're really only going to sit down with one or two people. So you have to, and what we're going to get into is, how do you get the appointment so you can get in the door and be that one or two agents that will get the listing.
That's right. Those stats, because remember, this book was written in 2003.
Yeah.
Gary just said it on his on the live yesterday, that it is still relevant. The MREI, which is the investor book we do on Fridays now at 11 o'clock, it's still relevant. These are still relevant, but to your percentages, I believe, like, I don't know, I think it went down to 64% or so, interview one, where it used to be 70 something. I think that has to do with the ability to market to sellers, where now, oh, maybe it is a good idea that I look at one or two or three, okay? Yet you're still dealing with, I would be confident saying there's always going to be at least 50% of those sellers are only meeting with one agent. 50% of those buyers are only meeting with one agent. And so it's your duty to get in front of them so that they can choose you when they're ready. And we've made it, when this book was written compared to now, we've made it a lot easier for you to be in touch with people in a consistent way. So what we were talking about before is people that you know, people that you don't know, people that you don't know versus people that you know, is Mets versus not Mets. So I want you to know that language as we go forward in this topic is Mets and not Mets.
Yeah, no, and we're going to get into that in a minute. And I think basically, so, to what you're saying and what we've been saying is, in order to be one of those first two positions of mind share and get that appointment, you need to have a systematic lead generation effort. And that's really what we're going to get into now. Because ultimately, I've heard Gary say this, or maybe I've heard a lot of people say it, but the quality is in the quantity. So ultimately, it's about getting a vast number of leads. But then the second piece of it, when we talked about this, is lead conversion. Because one of the things on page 135, I just want to read this one section because I think it's important to understand. It says the number of converted leads you achieve and the sales volume into which they translate will be your net results. High conversion rates will allow you to generate the same income from fewer leads than if you had lower conversion rates. But lower conversion rates can be just as effective if you can amass a great number of leads. So again, it comes down to the number of leads that you can get, and the quality will be in the quantity. That's
right. And tomorrow we're going to be diving a little deeper into what some of these activities are.
Yep.
In you're saying the masses of leads versus going a little bit more intimate with a niche or a database or people that you've already met and now you're following up. So we're going to talk about the activities tomorrow. And with that, there's really two elements, and I think Eric hit on it. I think last time we were with him, is there's prospecting and there's marketing. And in today's world, you have to do both. When I started in the business in 2004, it was a marketing based market. You could literally, and I mailed 3,500 pieces at one point to Manalapan. That was the town I lived in. I grew up in. I sold a lot of houses there.
Yep.
And so I would just consistently, and I learned it from Adele, who was my first
Yep.
broker owner. I would market, and I first started with 80 houses. It was the street I lived on. And until I got a listing, I marketed those 80 houses every month, 2 times a month, 2 different ways.
Yep.
And then I went to, once I got some business, then I expanded it to 180 homes in one section of the neighborhood. Then I went to the whole neighborhood. Then as I saw the business coming, at that point, we were looking at a 1 to 2% return on a postcard.
Now,
So
how
if
often did you do it?
we did it 1 to 2 times a month. One was a direct mail piece that went actually in the mail.
Yep.
The other was either a walk, a talk. We would do a lot of door knocking in that neighborhood because I grew up there.
And you did this every month for how long? Was there a duration?
Well, I followed the model, so
Yeah.
I stuck with it for 2 years.
Mhm.
Every neighborhood I picked up, I stuck with it for 18 months minimum.
Yep. Well, no,
18.
yeah, no, the reason I'm asking you is, and just kind of digging deeper is because one of the big messages in here and then is just frequency and consistency. We're going to get into the numbers that you're talking about, the duration, how long of that, but you saw results not because you did it for 1 month and then you're like, oh, well, I didn't get anything back. Like, this didn't work. You did it for 18 months and it was a frequency and consistency that got you the leads.
I will share with you.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in coaching ever since I got in the business.
Mm-hmm.
I took it very seriously. I went to mega agent camp, and I saw that all the best of the best had coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't afford the $1,000 a month package, so I went for the $450 a month package because I felt if I spent the money, I was going to hold that dollar accountable. And I can tell you that that was the best investment I ever made in myself.
Yep.
So I had a coach, Mike Krantz, and he still is a coach with MAPS. He's
Mm-hmm.
down in Florida, him and his wife, Mary. And he just shared with me that I did not have to let the 18-month suggestion
Yep.
be my reality.
Yep.
Okay, because if you were to just do the marketing and you were to let it go, the book will tell you 18 months, give it, and you should start to see a return on that investment.
Yep.
And I just didn't have the time to wait for that because I am impatient and I want it yesterday.
Now. Yeah.
And I want it correct. And so I was challenged by the waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said to me, well, you really don't have to wait if you take it very seriously. Yep. And now every single expired that came up in that neighborhood, I called. I wasn't an expired queen,
Yep.
but I was an expired queen in that neighborhood on my mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was one thing I did outside of the for sale by owners. If there was a for sale by owner in that area, in that vicinity of where I was lead generating and had my marketing working, it was my duty to call them to let them know that I had been assigned to their neighborhood. Who assigned them? I assigned myself.
Mm-hmm.
Who assigned you? Blame it on me. Blame it on Matt. Blame it on Gary Keller. I've been assigned to your neighborhood. And I see that you're on the private market. I noticed that your home is for sale. Would you be interested in selling if we were to procure a buyer to somebody that wasn't in your... And I would just go out and I would see, because I had a duty to go know every piece of inventory that was inside of that market if I was going to lead generate that market through marketing and prospecting. And then the other thing was any house that came on the market, I went and previewed. I knew it. I was pushing it. I was trying to sell it to one of my buyers because if I didn't have a listing there and I sold a buyer there, well, then after the sale, with the approval of the buyer who now is my new homeowner, I would get the approval that I could put a sign in their yard and says another home sold by Mary Beth's home selling team.
Yep.
So I still got the neighborhood mind share because they would drive around and now the new owners were there. And it was yet another marketing piece that I was able to do inside of that neighborhood that I was told it was going to take me 18 months to generate business from. Mm-hmm. So what I did learn through that process, and I know this isn't everything about the chapter, but I think this is important. What I did learn through that, there were 2 different neighborhoods. One neighborhood, I did that, and I started doing business. It was the neighborhood, Monmouth Heights, Manalapan, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And then another section, which was in Monroe, New Jersey, same activities, not much. I got one listing out of there over like the course of 3 years. And then I stopped that. And then from that activity, you know what I learned, Matt? You need to look inside the neighborhoods to see, is there a turnover? Are these houses going to sell?
Hmm.
So what I was marketing in Monmouth Heights, those homes were built in 68.
Hmm.
So we know in New Jersey, a lot of homes were built in 68, 72. Then another build was in 85. Then you have another one in the late 90s. And so it was real easy. That was that was a resale market. When I went into Monroe, it was a neighborhood that was built by Matzel and Mumford, and it was brand new construction. It was beautiful homes. But the reality was those homeowners just got there a few years ago.
Yeah.
The tenure wasn't there. So there
Yeah.
wasn't going to be any turnover. I will tell you, I probably got out of the neighborhood too soon. Had I just hung in there, and I became a team leader, and I stopped focusing on the sales. But had I hung in there, and I was the only agent through those first 5 years that they'd seen in their mailbox,
Yeah.
now that neighborhood does sell. It often sells, and it's a younger home, and it does well. So I would have got the mind share, even though the market share wasn't there. So you've said this before: is it's mind share to gain market share,
Yep.
and that's what the lead
Absolutely.
generation model is all about: is systemizing how to gain the mind share so that you can have the market share.
100%. And you were just touched on really nicely the on pages 136 through 138, they start talking about the three key areas of the lead generation model. You really just hit on the prospect marketing piece. On page 138, there's a whole list of marketing, advertising, promotional items, direct mail, which you talked about, prospecting about the telemarketing and face to face. On page 137, back a page, we're also looking at basically four areas that you can really uh, reach out to expand your pool. And that's the general public who you haven't met. And Mary Beth was talking about the Mets versus haven't
Yeah.
met. You got the haven't Mets and you got the Mets. Um, you've got your targeted group of haven't Mets, which you're talking about, like the different neighborhoods you reached out to. And then you've got allied resources, which we'll get into in a minute. But those are going to be the four areas you're going to strategically nurture and strategically build your business from.
Right. So I want you to think a little bit about this, because this is really important. And if we slow this down and stop kind of here, I'm okay with that,
Yeah, I'm good
so
too.
that we can move into what tomorrow, the 30, well, it's now the 36 touch, but
Yeah.
the two different types of touch plans,
Yep.
campaigns, because I need for you guys to think about who is going in your marketing campaign. Just as I spoke about that, I was marketing to a neighborhood that didn't have much turnover.
Yep.
I mean, if you're throwing your money or your efforts, and maybe it's not even money, it's just efforts and systems at something that is not going to yield a sale,
Yep.
then you can't beat yourself up if no sale comes out of it, because there are no sales to come out of it. So I
Exactly.
don't want you to set yourself up for failure. And the first, that inside that circle, allied resources, I don't want to, go against anything Matt was saying. He said, we'll be talking about it, but I want you guys to think about who are your allied resources. Allied resources sounds like a really fancy word. It's your closest people.
Yep.
It's when somebody says, oh, I think my friend needs to buy real estate. Who is the friend that says, oh, you know what? My girlfriend's in real estate.
Yep.
Oh, I have a friend in real estate. Can I get you their information? Who are those people? When I was an agent, my father was my biggest raving fan. And some of my agents know this, and some of my past agents know this. My father used to go grocery shopping and take my notepad with him and literally write down one item on the notepad, milk, and
Yep.
throw it in the carts everywhere
Yep.
to generate some face recognition, because my face was on top of the notepad
Yep.
in my town that I was also marketing to, that he was a bus driver, my mom was a school teacher, my sister and I went to school there. That is a raving fan.
Yep.
That is an allied resource.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need for you guys to understand Is that 3 people in your life, 5 people? Do you have a really tight 10?
Yep.
Those people you are going to need to treat a little different. You're going to need to, put the cell phone down and pay attention to their birthdays and make sure that they are important to you, even when your
They're your
business is.
VIP list.
Yeah.
They're VIPs, and I think one thing I do just want to hit on, because you did a great job there. They say in here, educate, ask, help, and reward. When you're educating them how to communicate with you, communicate with them to accept leads. But the one piece in that I don't think when I say we, the one piece that I think sometimes gets overlooked is the reward piece, because sometimes you'll receive a lead from someone or a referral and it won't go anywhere, or maybe it'll be a dead end. Yet you need to reward the behavior of that person giving you that lead, that referral, that, regardless of how it pans out, you got to reward the behavior, not if it closes.
Well, because we have to remember that we cannot help everybody. I know, like, people joke, like, wounded bird. Mary Beth wants to help everybody. I get it. It's part of what my heart is, and I'm not going to ever let that go. So, but we cannot help everybody.
Yeah.
So, to that point is, wait, what were you? What
I
was
was
I
saying
saying?
reward the behavior, reward the activity.
Right. So we have to remember that our business is in talking real estate. It's in conversations.
Yeah.
It's in consultations.
Yeah.
It then generates appointments and listing signs and buyer signs and then contracts to go to the closing table. And yet, an old methodology, which is I think it's coming out of the Ferry coaching program, is 40 conversations to one transaction. And right now we may be looking at double down, might be 80 conversations to one transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's still the measurement, the lead versus the lag measures, and we've talked about that in other sessions. What am I measuring so that the lag measure, what lead measure do I measure so the lag measure shows up? And
Yeah.
so the lead measure in this is, have I had any conversations with people about real estate?
Yeah.
Because then eventually those conversations are going to result in contacts and appointments to
Exactly.
contracts and closing. And yet we have to measure how many conversations we're having.
Yeah.
And so we reward the behavior, like you said, of the referral, because we want that to happen more and more. It's a lot easier to receive a warm referral from somebody inside of your database or inside of your world and call them to say, hey, I know Matt cares about you.
Yeah.
I would love to help you. How can I help you?
Yeah.
That's a really easy call to make. So I know that you guys would love more of that. And that's talking about working on your met side and not your not met.
Yeah.
So also to this though is, on top of that, allied resources, when we go out to the outside of that circle, it says general public haven't met.
Yeah.
And I want you to start to think, because in this book it's not going to address this because that wasn't there in
Yeah.
2003, but your social media world.
Absolutely.
Inside of your social media world is, depends on what platform you're really
Tons of contacts.
super visible. Huh?
Tons of contacts. Just people.
Tons of contacts and tons of opportunities to create new groups and new people, like have it Mets turn into Mets through social media. I know, like, Ronnie took it and ran with it. We gave an idea about like, where can you order at, what restaurants are open, where to eat.
Yeah.
And so he started a group where now local businesses can plug in, and now he's created some not Mets become Mets because he gave them an outlet to come to. So I want us to look at all of how we're building our database and who we're adding into it. We got to get a little creative, because that is where the money is, guys. To Matt's first point is, it's all in the quantity,
not the quality.
Not the quality. You're going to find the quality inside the quantity.
Exactly. And I think that's a good place to stop for today. We kind of got up to page like 142.
That was a great conversation, Matt.
So we'll dive deeper tomorrow into setting up your database, because your database is your business, ultimately feeding it, and then the touch campaign, so the 8x8s, the 12 directs, and the 36 touch. So we will dive deeper into that tomorrow.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Have a powerful day. And if you know anybody who wants to get on our 3 o'clock, we're having a career hour
Yep.
at 3 o'clock. So you can get to know us, our virtual office, our support team. And if not for you, then share it with the friends and invite somebody to come on our career hour.
Absolutely. We'll see you then.
All right. Bye,
Okay.
Matt.
Bye.